Good morning and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm Justine Reichman, your host. Today with me is Sarah Wentzel Fisher, and I'm excited to talk to you, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Justine.
So Sarah, normally when we come on, I like to give the person an opportunity to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about what they do, who they are. So I'd love for you to just start with your name and your title and what you do.
Thanks. I'm Sarah Wentzel Fisher, and I am the executive director of the Quivira Coalition, which is a nonprofit organization headquartered in Santa Fe, but that does work throughout the primarily Rocky Mountain states in the West, but we sort of have touch points beyond that. Other things about me, I am on video calling in today from a place called Polk's Folly Farm, which is in San Antonio, New Mexico, which is 30 minutes east of Albuquerque and about an hour south of Santa Fe. Another hat I wear is helping here at the farm. I have a very small flock of sheep that's sort of my own enterprise at the farm, but the primary work of the farm is as a regenerative hog farm. We have about 120 pigs and 25 goats and 100 chickens, and we're actively producing compost, feeding all of those animals primarily food waste, and really trying to tighten up our carbon cycle. So that's another thing that I do. And then I think another thing I like to do in terms of my introduction is just that I am very involved in Farmers Union. Rocky Mountain Farmers Union is the farmers union that I'm involved with. I'm on their board of directors. I represent the state of New Mexico with them. So
Thank you so much for sharing that. So given that, vast amount of things that you do, given the vast amount of things that you do and the array of roles you play, what is your specialty and background?
I feel like my sort of my superpower is connecting people to one another and really recognizing where one person or organization has a need and connecting them with the people that meet that need. And
you're a connector. You're a connector.
I'm definitely a connector. That's my superpower. There's a second question that I lost somewhere in talking about that, but
speciality and background. So like, for example, what is your background in this area and what brought you here? What interests do you specifically lean into from your background that brought you to be the executive director where you are?
That is a great question. And I actually like telling this story a lot. So my background is extremely eclectic. I have lived in New Mexico since the mid-90s, and I came here to do undergraduate work. And at the time, I was sort of like a lot of folks, just sort of like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to college. And I decided to study creative writing, which I really enjoyed. And I dove into publishing a little bit and got pretty passionate about that. Immediately after school, I got hired by the Gates Family Foundation, Bill Gates, and it was a brand new foundation. And I had a really interesting experience being able to work in rural America in public libraries to connect those libraries to internet. From there, I moved back to New Mexico because I just missed community and missed this place. And I came back and I thought, how can I really get people activated and feel like I'm making an impact in the world? I then sort of dove into learning about studio art production and filmmaking.
So was that to connect your interest in making an impact in the world?
But so I'll get there. But what was really my interest there is that I saw creative practice as a way to convene people in conversations about place. And so all of my art projects were about doing that. And there was a moment where the light went on and I realized that I was less interested in a studio art practice, which would have been about me as an artist, and was more interested in how a practice of art could be a vehicle to have some really important conversations that we need to be having as a collective. So I decided to go to graduate school, and I went to graduate school at UNM, also the University of New Mexico, to study community and regional planning. And at the time, there was not a big focus or conversation or body of literature about our food systems. And but that was intriguing to me. So I was like, well, why isn't there this conversation where we talk about all these other critical infrastructures, right? We talk about transportation and housing and water infrastructure, but there wasn't a lot of discussion at that time about our food systems. And so I decided to do some research into what was the economic viability of direct market farms in the Middle Rio Grande, which is where we are. And that led me to a whole array of different jobs, including working for the National Young Farmers Coalition, working for a regional land trust, working for a fairly large natural foods co-op in the area. But sort of the theme in all of those activities was really how to connect people and how to bring this idea of creative convening to these processes that really require people to be in relationship and dialogue with one another to come up with decisions that enable us to do what I'm now currently really passionate about, which is, how do we steward land in a way that is thoughtful about both the ecology and the economy in terms of how it supports people and land and water.
And I appreciate you sharing all your background and your journey to get there. And I know it was a little bit of a windy path. Nobody understands that better than me. I've done like 6 different careers before I got here, everything from finance to gaming to now food the last few years. But underneath it all, food has always been my passion. So I get it. So my question for you is that, your background led you to explore all these different things. And then you came and you're doing this now. So I'm wondering, what are you hopeful for now that you've found your place, where you want to be and create an impact? What are you hopeful for?
I I am really hopeful for like changes that we can't anticipate. I feel like we're sort of at a sea change moment in our food systems and our agriculture systems because they are sort of at the precipice of it feels like collapse sometimes, but I also feel like those are the moments when you get bigger creative ideas or people who are willing to like lean in and risk something or big moments of redefinition.
So why are you doing this in particular?
I think because I love food. I love I love I love being connected to land and I love seeing other people connected to land. And I really enjoy creating opportunities for folks to create connection to land and to each other and to have light bulbs go on when those connections happen about how bigger systems work.
So I know you mentioned within this organization that you spearheaded and co-founded a program there. Can you talk to me a little bit about that program and the change you hope to make by instituting that program?
Sure, absolutely. So I did not found the Quivira Coalition, but I did help to found something called the Carbon Ranch Initiative, which is a program that's focused on soil health on rangeland. And
For those who are not familiar, what's rangeland?
rangeland are lands that are grasslands, that are grazed, that are not really suitable for producing crops on them, and they're not forests.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so maybe it was my second or third year with the organization, was approached by some folks doing work in California. Wendy Silver was the scientist. There was a woman named Calrose Ostrander who was working with the Marin Carbon Project and some other carbon initiatives in California to really start to understand how do we improve soil health on rangeland, and what is soil health on rangeland. So a thing that maybe folks don't know is that by comparison to, say, cropping systems, information about soil health on range systems is much more minuscule. If you look at the body of literature and the studies, but rangelands also represent this like enormous opportunity for carbon capture, for healthy water systems, those types of things. And so when CalRose showed up and said, "Hey, do you want to bring this work we're doing in California to New Mexico?" I said, "That seems pretty intriguing. Let's try it out."
And so what was when you brought it there, what was the first, what were the initial impact that you saw by instituting that?
Um, it sort of felt like one of those moments where there's a lot going on, and I think that there's a very small piece that I can kind of claim with this particular program. But we started with essentially a white paper that had a handful of concepts about things we could do in the state to get people thinking differently about their carbon cycle. At the same time, it was a moment when the UN had declared the International Year of Soils. So I think that meant that there was a lot more attention being given to soil health. And there also was a lot of political will around creating healthy soils programs. So sort of parallel to creation of this program in the state of New Mexico, there were folks who were working to pass a healthy soils initiative. We were the 12th state in the union to have that, and those particular initiatives have now become pretty mainstream and normalized at the state level, to create a pathway to get technical assistance and money essentially to farmers to help them think about soil health. So that's not necessarily the impact of just the Carbon Ranch initiative, but I think that it was all at this moment when we were forming the program that has helped move some of these things forward.
Oh, awesome. And so when you think about the farmers and you think about the individuals, what's the one thing you wish that they knew that was so important about soil health?
Um, I mean, it seems that feels like a hard question to answer because it feels so simple, but it's like soil health is really at the center and the root of functioning ecosystems. It is the pathway to having healthy water, of having healthy plants, of producing healthy food, of capturing carbon out of the atmosphere. So it's like it's kind of at the center of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I
So
think
that
that I think that that's one thing that I wish like a general population would really grab onto. And I think that the second thing for farmers and ranchers is just that soil is totally alive. It is alive as the animals you are tending or the plants you're tending. And I think that most farmers and ranchers are increasingly getting that, but the depth of the understanding around that, I think it's always fantastic when we work with farmers and ranchers and to see them just sort of light up when they get more information about what that actually means.
Yeah, of course. Now, I'm imagining that you do a lot of research to understand the impact, right? So you do a lot of research. So, in what ways does the research you're conducting impact our daily life?
So interestingly, we do a small amount of research. We try to think of, in this program in particular, the connections between application. So how are we doing research that is informed by the questions that farmers and ranchers are asking, that then is providing more information to farmers and ranchers or folks providing technical assistance. So there's a cycle there where it's like, what are the questions that farmers and ranchers have? How do we do research that's there? But I think that the research that we're doing is really informing is, one, in particular, what are the things that are different or unique about how soil functions in really dry systems that have livestock on them? And then what are ways in which we can begin to think about really creating resilience in those soils through looking at places where we have carbon waste and creating those or shifting that to be an asset. So a couple of things we do in the program are we teach about compost production, and we teach about biochar production.
So within this production, can you just break it down for us so that we better understand what it would look like for the person that is engaging in this program?
Sure. So how it works, farmers and ranchers will come to us, and we do something called soil health planning. So we work with them to really like understand what do you got to work with? What's your baseline? What do your soils look like? What does your production look like? Are you raising animals? Are you raising vegetables? Are you raising hay? Maybe a mix. And then from there, what are other things that you could learn that will help you hit what your soil goals are? And so we have workshops on large aerated static pile compost production, for example, or we have an on-ranch biochar kiln, which is a giant metal circle that you can bring out, and you can haul brush out of your forest and put it in there and produce something that is a useful organic soil amendment to help repair an area of your range that maybe is lacking in carbon or needs a little bit of a boost.
Is there one story from one individual that, participated that you could share that might shed some light around the impact it's had for them?
Sure. I think this is very close to home, but I might just talk about the farm where I live and the impact that it has had here. So, as I said, I live here, but I'm not the farmer here. And this farm actually produces compost from the hogs that we raise. But we also have about 40 acres of very degraded range. And so we were all pretty excited to dive into this work and be able to hopefully demonstrate what the impacts could be and then share that with other folks. So we did very small plots here of putting a really small amount of compost. So like 1/4 inch, we did 3 different depths: 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, full inch, to just, then understand what are the impacts. Like, how did it create soil stability? How did water infiltrate more effectively? Did we get more vegetative growth where we added the compost? And we saw all of those things to varying degrees. But definitely there was improvement, and that enabled us to connect with other producers. So another producer that we connected with is a woman who ranches in the northeast part of the state. This is going to be a little bit of a long story. So if you want to dive in with any questions, feel free to ask.
I think I just wanted to really understand the impact it could have on you. So in 1 or 2 sentences, can you give us, you did this and this was the net results?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've put compost out probably at, I want to say, several dozen ranches at this point. And the net results are actually very small, but I think what it's inspiring more than anything is a conversation and a network around like, what is soil health and how are we improving it? And how are we thinking about it almost like acupuncture? So rather than thinking about improvement of hundreds of thousands of acres, because when you're talking about rangeland, most people in the Southwest are managing in the tens to hundreds of thousands of acres. But it's like if you apply compost or biochar in a small area, you can increase the seed bank there. You can reduce erosion there. And I think that those are the impacts. And while it may be small and very targeted, that can kind of create a ripple effect out on the landscape.
Okay. So within everything that your organization is doing, what would you share as being the most revolutionary concept and program that you guys have put together?
Um, I think our work as a whole is a little bit revolutionary because I think that we are an organization that is really trying to think about whole systems
Mhm.
and approach how we produce food and how we live as a community on the land in a way that acknowledges that we can't just do sort of a single thing and make those systems uh, work more effectively.
Okay.
And um, that probably sounds a little funny, but yeah, I really think that our approach to thinking about things as wholes rather than their parts is pretty revolutionary.
Well, what would you say is the single most important thing for someone to do to take control of the health of their soil?
um, well, there I'll just say the soil health principles. So, and hopefully I do this correctly, but keeping your soils covered is one. And whether you've got, a 10-foot square in your urban backyard or you have 10,000 acres of rangeland, keeping your soil covered is super important. Um, Biodiversity is huge. And so different types of plants or different types of animals. Um, uh, Integration of animals is another soil principle, and whether that's pollinators or having grazing animals, and again, sort of thinking about scale, um,
Mhm.
and a living root
Okay.
is the last one. So those are like soil health is it can be really complicated and it's also super simple and something that everybody can participate in.
I think that that gives people an opportunity to create change for themselves,
Yeah,
in a simple, approachable way.
absolutely.
So, as we wrap up, are there any hard hitting statistics that you could share in regards to the benefits of soil health?
I like to give some statistics about agriculture because I think that these are really important when we think about soil health stewardship.
Okay.
Um, Today, the average age of a farmer or a rancher is 60 years old or older. 100 years ago, more than 30% of our population, their primary profession was farming. And today, less than 1% of our population is engaged in agriculture as their primary profession, which means that, 1 in 100 people feed us. And 1 in 100 people, their main focus is that idea of soil health.
Mhm.
And that's the piece that I really think is that opportunity for really revolutionary change to happen. Um, to me, it says we have an opportunity to invite everybody in to the conversation and the work of soil health. And I think the last thing I'll say is like, soil health is our single best tool for mitigating climate change.
Okay.
Like
I think
we can
that
work,
strong note, right?
yeah,
Like, like if we learned anything from this, it's that soil health can be a change maker for the planet.
exactly. Absolutely. It's like the very best vehicle for getting carbon out of the atmosphere and into the ground is plants.
Okay, so
And
people should
so,
refer to and go back to those ideas that you gave them to create soil health. Because if we all
exactly.
sit there, we've got a greater chance at keeping our health, the health of our planet, and maintaining
Exactly.
it so that we don't
Yep.
have so much, so it's not such, it's not all that negative climate change, and we can try to work towards creating a healthier planet for ourselves, our families, and our children.
Exactly.
Awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today. If people want to learn more about how to create soil health or what your organization does, what's the best way for them to learn about that?
You can find us online at quiviracoalition.org, and I'm assuming that that will be in the show notes if you need to know how it's spelt. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook with that handle as well. So look us up and be in touch.
Thanks so much, Sarah, for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Justine. It's nice chatting with you.
Likewise.